Gender equality is largely considered a given in today's United States. Women, they can't be denied jobs, housing, benefits, or anything else based off their gender. And the fight for equal pay, it is continuing. But there certainly remains a gender barrier when it comes to courtrooms. Just 25% of lead counsels in all trials, and only 20% in cases involving private parties, are led by females. Now, to learn why and what can be done about it, Andrew recently sat down with former U.S. Circuit Judge Shira A.
Judge Scheindlin, let's begin with the findings of that report by the State Bar Association that female attorneys served as lead lawyers in just 25% of all commercial and criminal cases in the state, and only 20% of the time they were the lead lawyers while representing private parties. Were those numbers and those findings surprising to you?
Well, they weren't surprising to me because I was a judge in the federal court for 22 years and I know what I saw in my courtroom. So while they may be surprising to all the folks who will read the report or have read it, I have to say, unfortunately, they were not particularly surprising to me. And I do think it's important that you clarified that the 25% overall is probably misleading. It's really lower because in private civil cases, it was all of about 19%. In other words, the total figure is raised because of the criminal docket, which has a lot of public employees.
How does this impact the outcomes of cases, and how are trials different when women serve as lead lawyers as opposed to trials where they don't?
I don't know that it does affect the outcome of cases. I don't really think that's the point. I have no empirical evidence that it does affect the outcome in any way. But in terms of the profession, it's discouraging and troubling that women have been 50% of law school classes for more than 25 years, and yet in private litigation are hovering at only 19% of court appearances. That's the point. So I don't know that there's any proof that it has any effect on the outcome of trials or that women try cases any differently than men. In fact, the good way to look at it is they're just as good, maybe better, who knows, but certainly no worse. Women are absolutely as competent to try a case as a man is. And we know that from looking at the public sector figures where women are, let's say, 40% of the court appearances and do just as well.
You've also observed women in the courtroom, female attorneys in the courtroom, wind up playing different roles as opposed to the lead attorney. What do a lot of female attorneys wind up doing if they're not leading as the attorneys in these cases?
Right. So we're not talking now about trials. We're talking about court appearances, which in the survey could include trials, but probably not because so few cases these days go to trial. So we're talking about an appearance before a judge, an initial appearance, a scheduling conference, maybe an argument on a motion. And the woman is often the junior person, and as she's sitting at the table next to the attorney who's the lead, who's a man. And the man is arguing, and the woman is passing him notes, or he has to say, "One moment, Your Honor," stop the argument, lean over, consult with her. He seems to get the answer and then goes back to the podium, which is very disconcerting and disruptive for the flow of the argument. So it seems a lot of times the person who actually knows the information and worked on the brief or prepped the witness is not the one standing up and speaking. And that's a lack of equality. It's as simple as that. So the woman plays the backup role or the junior role sitting in court next to the man.
I guess the $64,000 question is, why is this happening in such large numbers?
Yes, I think that is the $64,000 question, and it's not addressed in the report. So I have to say that with respect to that question, I'm out on my own. I'm speculating without the report to back me up. I think it's possible that women don't choose to go into litigation at the same rate as men. I also think they leave that department or that field more often than men, maybe because they are discouraged that they're not getting the same opportunities as the men. I think the client tends to want the older, experienced, star trial lawyer to be the client's lawyer in the courtroom. And so the client says, you know, Bob, I've known you for years. It's your case. You can get anybody you want to assist you, but I want you. So I think a lot of this starts with the client having confidence in a senior male figure that the client has known for a long, long time. And it's harder for the women to establish those kinds of relationships with the client unless they're given that opportunity from the minute they come in the law firm. And if they're not taken to client meetings, if they're not developing relationships with high-level people in the company, they're not going to be chosen to be the lead trial counsel. And that's why we see the big difference between public and private. In the public sector, and what I mean by public is the U.S. Attorney's Office, the DA's office, the Corporation Counsel, and the state AG. The client doesn't develop a long-term relationship with anyone. The office head simply assigns the case to somebody in the office and hopefully does so equally and fairly. But in the private sector, the client has a big role and the senior management of the firm has a big role. And if they're not watching out for gender equality, they're going to get gender disparity.
Finally, Judge Scheindlin, if this were a bank we were talking about not giving loans to female applicants or landlords not renting apartments to female tenants, there would be legal remedies here. Are there any legal remedies to be had when it comes to the disparity or the low numbers of women who are lead lawyers? Is there any way to compel that number to change?
I don't think so legally. There are many lawsuits pending right now against big firms where women in the firm, women partners or senior women associates, have been suing their own firms for a pay disparity or a promotion disparity, or even if they are equity partners, they're not bringing home the same amount of money. I don't know whether those suits in any of those cases are going to be successful, but there's a growing number of such suits. So women are able to say, you're not paying me the same, I'm working equally hard, or you're not promoting me even though I've done just as great a job. Those kinds of suits, yes, but there's no legal remedy, I don't think, for a woman to say, you didn't give me the same opportunity. But you know, lawyers are creative, and maybe some woman will say, I couldn't achieve partnership because I wasn't permitted to demonstrate my skills in the courtroom because I wasn't getting the assignments. So in a sort of backdoor way, that could come into play if a woman sues a law firm saying, I wasn't given the same opportunity to make the same money or to make partners. So it's possible.
Judge Shira A, former federal district court judge, now an arbitrator and mediator and of counsel at the Strook Law Firm. Judge Scheindlin, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
You're most welcome.
And coming up next, we'll take a look at some local headlines, so please stay with us.